Chapter 720, A Dwelling Place for the Gods. Very suddenly, throughout Blizzard City, news about the Tengu squad leader swept across the social network. It is said that this new investigation team leader came from a poor background, had an ordinary family, and was an outsider from the outer city. However, with his strong abilities and excellent character, he worked hard to make a name for himself in his city. It is said that he was intelligent and talented from an early age and was deeply loved by his neighbors. It is said that he had excellent academic results, but as a young boy, his family was poor, and the men and boys of the whole village pooled together 100 eggs to send him to university. After returning from his studies, he caught the end of the world, and in order to protect the land that raised him and repay the neighbors who had helped him, he resolutely took on the responsibility of the guardian deity of Tianhai City. It was he who safeguarded the peace of the city. It was he who foiled the plot of the Baishi sect in the midst of danger. It was he who, during the mission to encircle and attack the Eclipse Moon, fought 4 enemies single-handedly and killed 4 of the Eclipse Moon's evil men. And this person, he walks in the darkness, protecting the light of the people of the Jiangnan region. But even after doing so many deeply moving things, he was unwilling to leave his name. When people asked him his name, he only had one response: "I'm just an ordinary person who guards the peace of a region." He was the hero of Jiangnan, the civilian hero with the code name Chaos. Starting with the morning news, Blizzard City spared no effort in using all channels to publicize Zhang Yi's deeds. However, all key information about Zhang Yi was concealed, as Zhang Yi had requested. His place of origin, name, and date of birth were all unverifiable. Only by maintaining such a high level of secrecy could the exposure of information about Zhang Yi himself be minimized. However, the means of public opinion clearly had an effect. Since Blizzard City's propaganda department had tailored a heroic image of Zhang Yi as a poor but compassionate person, it quickly attracted the attention of all the people in Blizzard City. As a result, Gao Changkong's aura as a civilian hero was weakened considerably. An outsider from the outer city actually killed 4 people during the mission to encircle and annihilate Eclipse Moon. I heard that he killed 5 Eclipse members in total. This Chaos One alone killed 4 of them. My goodness, doesn't that mean he's even more powerful than the Heavenly Squad? Is he even more powerful than Deng Shintong? There are such amazing foreigners in the outer city. This is great. I really did not know that there were so many talented people in our country. Even in the face of the apocalypse, there are still heroes who are willing to step forward to save the people. To put it bluntly, the foreigners in the outer city were looked down upon by the people of Blizzard City as being of even lower origin than those from District E. So for a time, Zhang Yi became a model of inspiration. People would say, "Look at that guy, he was able to grow up in those difficult circumstances outside. What reason do you have not to work hard?" Although some people still questioned whether this chaos was just a front created by the higher-ups in Blizzard City, however, Zhang Yi's achievements were real and impeccable. He had indeed made great contributions to both the Tianhai City and the mission to encircle Eclipse Moon. Even if someone was looking for a fault, they couldn't find one. Under such a halo, everyone wanted to see the legendary foreigner from the outer city for themselves. Even though he lived in Area A, the young ladies and noble women from the high-level families would sneak a peek nearby during the week. Some even wanted to use their connections to invite Zhang Yi to have lunch with them at their homes. These issues were all handled by someone on the side of Langsanching for Zhang Yi. After all, the purpose of turning him into a god was not to make him an expert in women, but to facilitate the subsequent execution of his mission. On the other side, in the underground laboratory in Dangyuan, the experiment tailored for Liang Yu was finally coming to an end. She had spent 3 whole days inside the experimental capsule, undergoing multiple experiments to modify her body. No one could imagine the immense pain she had to endure during the process. However, Liang Yu, with her well-trained physique and extraordinary willpower, endured it all. Next, it was time to test the results of the experiment. In the underground laboratory of Deng Manor, in a huge white experimental space, Liang Yu was wearing a black leotard with various data collectors attached. She looks no different from before. Because her body has been trained to the extreme. She started practicing martial arts at the age of 3, and has been training every day for decades, rain or shine. Her body has become the best killing machine. Combined with her iron will, she has become the best test subject. Outside the laboratory, behind the bulletproof glass, a large group of researchers in white lab coats stood. Deng Yuanbo and Lianqing stood here in silence, observing the results of the experiment. One of the researchers said into the microphone, "Miss Liang, please begin the third impact test." Liang Yu twisted her wrists and looked at the huge pile of experimental equipment around her. Hand strength tester, speed tester, strength tester. All kinds of equipment had been specially made for use with the XNUMXTH man. Liang Yu walked up to a barbell. The ends of the barbell were stacked with weights, weighing several thousand kilograms. But she bent slightly, and then lifted it with one hand. During the speed test, the sonic boom caused by the full sprint shattered the instrument. And the instrument for testing strength could not even withstand her punch. The tester looked at the large red error on the computer and helplessly said to Deng Yuanbo, "This is the third time. It's not the data that's wrong. It's her strength, it's beyond the limits of our experiment. This kind of effect is the first in history. It even surpasses the Shintong young master and Liao Honglei." He raised his black-framed eyes and looked at the woman in the laboratory, surrounded by billowing blue smoke. A deity dwells within her. Deng Yuanbo's breathing became a little heavier. He looked at the gem in the laboratory and was actually a little envious of Zhang Yi. He had such a talented person in his team. At the same time, he sighed, what a waste. If they could get Liang Yu to train with them, then in the last 6 months of the apocalypse, they could definitely make Liang Yu another team leader. She really has been wasting her time for too long. But then, on second thought, wasn't Zhang Yi also a terrifying freak? Forget it, for now, I'd better not get any ideas about her. Befriending Zhang Yi will naturally allow them to be used by me in the future if the need arises, Deng Yuanbo mused in his heart. He turned his head and commanded Lianqing, "You can tell Zhang Yi to come and collect her person." Chapter 721, The New Liang Yu. The sky was overcast and snow was falling. This endless snow had lasted for half a year and seemed to have no end. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin arrived at Deng Yuan. They waited in Deng Yuanbo's living room. Although Zhang Yi tried his best to keep a calm face, the way he kept looking outside the door from time to time revealed his inner nervousness and anticipation. What would Liang Yu look like? He thought to himself, a little bit of anticipation and a little bit of nervousness. Soon after, he saw Liang Yu. Uncle Deng Yuan and Lianqing brought Liang Yu over here, and Zhang Yi could already hear bursts of laughter on the way. It seemed that they were having a very harmonious chat. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin saw Liang Yu. She was still the same as she had been in the beginning, with her heroic eyebrows raised, her hair tied into a high ponytail, and a white, form-fitting outfit that showed off her well-trained body. It seemed that not much had changed. But the nature of people sometimes requires you to look beyond appearances to the essence. Zhang Yi knew that her inner self must have become different. As soon as she saw Liang Yu, Yang Xinxin ran over excitedly and gave her teacher a hug. "Teacher Liang, are you okay?" Zhang Yi also wanted to go over and ask Liang Yu about the experiment, but after glancing at Deng Yuanbo and Lianqing next to her, she held back her impulse. She walked slowly up to Liang Yu. "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" Liang Yu looked up at Zhang Yi's gaze, smiled slightly, and nodded. "I feel great. I have to thank Mr. Deng for his help." Zhang Yi thought to himself, it seems that Liang Yu's strength has improved tremendously. There were still outsiders present, so he didn't discuss anything too detailed. Instead, he smiled and looked at Deng Yuanbo. "Mr. Deng, thank you very much." Deng Yuanbo smiled faintly and said, "This was our agreement. I said that if you could solve the eclipse moon, we would both benefit." Zhang Yi laughed and said, "Since you put it that way, I won't hold back." Looking at Liang Yu, Zhang Yi suddenly thought, if he could get everyone around him to undergo the Deng family's transformation, would his team's overall strength not improve by several levels? With this thought in his heart, Zhang Yi took advantage of the fact that Deng Yuanbo needed him and said it out loud. After listening, Deng Yuanbo's smile grew wider at the corners of his mouth. At this time, the butler next to him, Lianqing, explained to him, "Mr. Zhang, you may not understand how much resources we need to expend to enhance the strength of an outsider. And the process of this kind of experiment is not something that everyone can bear." Zhang Yi sighed. "I see. I told you, it wouldn't be that simple." Deng Yuanbo said with a smile, "Although we cannot make them make such great progress in a short period of time like Miss Liang, we can still improve their bodies and enhance some of their abilities." Zhang Yi smiled slightly, and he had already made up his mind. He had only asked a few questions, and he would not be so rude as to directly make a request. Because this could only be a quid pro quo, and he had no relationship with the Deng family, they would not help him for no reason. "I understand. I hope we have the opportunity to work together in the future." Deng Yuanbo and Zhang Yi exchanged a few casual greetings, and he did not make any demands. He was cordial, like an NPC who simply came over to give buffs. However, Zhang Yi did not dare to underestimate him in the slightest. This kind of old fox was much better at playing power games than him. Zhang Yi found an excuse and led the way out. Uncle Deng did not stop him, but instead warmly asked Lianqing to escort them outside. He also asked the Deng family car to take them back to where they were staying. Before leaving, he handed Zhang Yi a gold pin. He told him that it was a relic from Deng Shintong's lifetime. "You wearing it will make it a lot easier to integrate the members of the divine team." Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel that Uncle Deng had really thought of everything. However, for him, there was no need to borrow strength to tame a few subordinates. Along the way, because the Deng family chauffeur was there, Zhang Yi didn't ask Liang Yu too many questions. However, once they got home, Zhang Yi couldn't stop talking. He asked curiously, "What was the Deng family experiment all about? What level of strength have you reached now, and have you experienced any physical discomfort?" Liang Yu took off her jacket and put it on the rack. Seeing Zhang Yi's face full of expectation and nervousness, she smiled. "The experiment was very strange. They put me in a transparent plexiglass chamber. Then they injected some drugs into me and performed some very strange operations." Recalling the process of the experiment, Liang Yu felt a chill run through her veins. She suddenly shivered. "I felt like I was reborn. Literally, I was reborn. Over the course of 3 days, my skin was completely replaced, and even my blood and organs showed obvious changes. Because I had to stay awake for a long time, the feeling was not something that the average person could bear." Liang Yu's face was very serious. Zhang Yi couldn't help but swallow. "Was it that painful?" Liang Yu nodded. If someone had weaker physical fitness or less determination, they might have died halfway through the experiment or even suffered a nervous breakdown. Yang Xinxin couldn't help but walk over and gently embrace her. "Teacher Liang, I didn't realize you had suffered so much." Yang Xinxin's tone was full of compassion. She still had great respect for this simple and kind teacher. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel silent. When Deng Yuanbo told him about this, he didn't mention the pain he endured during the experiment. But he did say that the requirements for candidates were very high. And he specifically mentioned Liang Yu. Zhang Yi had originally thought that was because he had only brought Liang Yu and Yang Xinxin to Blizzard City. Now it seems that it was not as simple as that at all. Because this kind of experiment, which is like trying to grow rice in the spring, is simply not something that the average person can bear. Zhang Yi looked at Liang Yu and said, "You've suffered." But Liang Yu shook her head with a smile. "This was my own choice in the first place, and they did remind me before the experiment. Although the process was very painful, the gains I've made are enormous." She clenched her fists, surprised by the newfound strength she felt in herself. For the first time in her life, she felt like this body was a sports car full of fuel, ready to unleash its horsepower. Zhang Yi stared at Liang Yu and began to gauge her true combat power. Liang Yu needed not be told about combat techniques, as she was already at the pinnacle of her abilities. The only shortcoming was that she had consumed too few aliens, resulting in only ordinary Delta-level combat power. According to Zhang Yi's reasoning, Liang Yu's previous comprehensive ability level was actually similar to Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, and others. So, what level of combat power did she have now? A plan quietly appeared in Zhang Yi's mind. A wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I think I should find you an opponent to test you out. The opponent Zhang Yi was talking about was naturally a member of his Tengu squad.